dollars an acre for our cattle ranches in annual property taxes. On our other farms in Madera County, we're paying $160 to $264 per acre per year. Okay? So we're paying over 50 times as much in property taxes on the permanent crops. We're employing 40 times as many people per acre on the permanent crops as we are on the rangeland crops. Why is that all important? Because I am very sympathetic to what's been said here today, and in terms of fairness, I certainly appreciate some of the concerns that have been expressed. The reality is, we got a problem here. This county has a problem. If we pass anything other than option C, I figured the property taxes coming into the county have to drop by at least $8.5 million a year. I mean, there's just no other way, and the number could be very, very much larger than that. Now, does that mean that I think that option C is absolutely fair in every way? Not necessarily, and the cattle side of me is sympathetic to what Michelle has said and what Clay has said. But we're in a tough situation. Madera County is in a tough situation. The economy of this county cannot sustain the losses that would be incurred by anything other than option C. Bill Dietrich spoke about farming. You're talking to somebody who has attempted to produce permanent crops on 23 inches of water. You can keep the trees alive, you can keep the vines alive, but you cannot produce an economic crop year in and year out. It just can't be done. I have the experience to know that that's true. And frankly, option C is no piece of cake for the permanent crop people, because can we do it on 28 inches? No. We'll have to find a way to access some other water, and we will have to take out some of our acreage as it is. The reason that it was set up through the committee, which we had many, many meetings over a 3-year period trying to figure all this out, we want to have a fairly gradual glide slope into this so we can figure out how we can keep the economy of this county intact while we're implementing SGMA. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Chairman and Board. I appreciate the time to speak to you today. I know that this is a very difficult decision you guys have put forth. I know that it's hard on not just the farmers, but the cattlemen also. Department of Water Resource.
Just need your name.
Oh, I'm sorry, Betsy Cardoza. I apologize about that.
Thank you.
Department of Water Resource drew the white area. We did not ask to be put in there, but we are. So they do see us deserving as having water rights. Otherwise, they would not have put us in there. So the water needs to stay with the land, and this is the reason I oppose option C, because that is stripping us of the water rights that come with the land that has been drawn on the map. Also, you guys speak of SALC giving us benefits financially for us not to pump. What's the difference between giving us our sustainable yield and our SALC? And we need to all remember why SGMA was put into place, why the law was voted into by our governor. It was to stop the overdrafting and the overpumping of our water table. It was not meant to attend to take allocation from never irrigated land, water from there, to give it to irrigated. It was to stop the overdrafting. And that is first and foremost the major problem that we have here today. And I know it's not an easy problem to fix, but I think that the cattlemen who have been good stewards of the land and who have been providing percolation and the open space for our county deserve our water rights, not to be stripped of it and devalued. So I would ask that you guys consider option A or B and give us our water that the Department of Water Resource sees that we have in our place. By taking it away, would you not be encouraging us to go out and develop it? Put concrete, put a dozer, That's not what we want to do, but you're saying basically if we don't have developed land, we don't deserve our water. It is not our desire to do that, as we are cattle ranchers. I'm a fifth generation, and I would like to pass that legacy on to my kids, and so on and so forth. So I am asking you and urging you to please oppose option C. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Greg Hooker. I have a dairy in Madera County, and I also farm here. And just thank you for the opportunity to speak. Not an easy decision to make, and it's a mess all the way around, but we have to deal with it. So it is what it is. My main reason to come up here is understanding the acre, and this is a question to Stephanie and Greg, I guess. I thought I understood it before today, but when Greg made his clarification on the non-irrigated acres, my doubts rose again. So my question is this an APN acre, or is it when we get our allocation, is it based on our APN acres or some other subset of that APN acres? So I'm not talking about rangeland. We'll leave that fight to somebody else. But I'm talking about on our properties down in the valley that have been irrigated. For instance, I put a solar system in that takes 5 acres back in 2014. Is that acreage going to be included in my allocation for my whole farm unit? And that's my question.
Okay, thank you.
To help them with the answering of that question, was that irrigated prior to January 1st, 2015 at any point? Okay, that was he read a statement concerning that previous to it kind of answers your question. So he can share that with you again if it was irrigated for that.
Very good. Thank you.
My name is, excuse me, my name is Darrell Silvera, and I'm a 4th generation rancher in the San Joaquin Valley, and we farm out on Road 9 in Madera County. We have a family farm. I'd like to thank all you folks that have worked so diligently for the last 3 years on this project, and as well as the people on the advisory committee for their hard work. There's no good decision with the problems we're facing. I understand that. Everybody's got their own axe to grind in this entire situation. It just seems to me that rewarding those that have contributed to this overdraft situation are being rewarded more than those that haven't. I don't think that that's very fair, and I think it constitutes a taking. And thanks to all of you for all the hard work you've done. I appreciate it, but I do not support Measure C.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm really disturbed. I'm sorry.
No,
Igal Trebach. I'm really disturbed. Not by the procedures. I feel like Alice in Wonderland is somewhere in this room. There are things that are being talked about that make no sense. And first of all, I want to say that definitely I'm opposing C. I think you guys have a tough job, and I think we're all going to have to give up something. But you are the jury of our peers. You are going to have to make the decision of who is going to get hurt more versus less. And I think the one thing that I want to pay attention to is the inequality between the ability to use our water. Now, I'm also an irrigator, and I also own never irrigated lands. I own never irrigated lands in order to be able to supplement my operation in my irrigated lands. Okay? I'm now being told that I'm not going to be able to utilize a farm unit on my irrigated lands, which means to me, okay, look at it. So my allocation is going to a bucket. It's going to go into a bucket of water that's going to be available to those who actually created the problem by over-irrigating. Okay? So they now have the chance to purchase the water that they took from me in order to make more money on the overdrafting area that they own. I'm part of the guilt, and I'm trying to be a part of the solution. I think what we need is to create as much equality as possible. So if I'm not able to create a farm unit, I'm not going to be able to run my business. What does a farm unit allow other people to do? So I'm told that I can only use the water on the property that I own. But wait a second. There is another segment over here that Alice in Wonderland is looking at that says, well, if you're an irrigator, you can also have another parcel somewhere else, and you can use the water from that other parcel, something which I'm not going to be allowed to do. If you want to equate the equation a little better, I believe we need to allow the farming unit to be included as part of the never irrigated lands. And I don't usually disagree with Stephanie. The one thing I disagree with Stephanie, although I think she is a great lady, she is up on the pedestal for me. We already have a water market. The water market exists whether you want to or not. If you're not going to have water available on your never irrigated land, excuse me, but you're out of luck, okay? You're going to lose, and there's nothing you can do with it. But if you're going to allow farm units to be created in those never irrigated lands, those who are irrigating would come to those who have never irrigated land and offer them an opportunity to lease from them land and have that land become a part of a farming unit. So I urge you not to look and not to vote for C. I'm looking to you to create more of an equitable position and allow those who are now looking to give up or not to give up, to be taken advantage of. One other item that I want to talk about, the ones who are going to be irrigators, okay, they now have a bucket of water that came from those who are never irrigated lands. Now they're going to buy that water, my water that they made me give up. They're going to buy it in order for them to make more money. I've been farming here for over 30 years, and I have attempted, and not just attempted, but I've done and gone beyond what other farmers have gone to in order to try and help and create sustainable water conditions. I wish other farmers would have done something similar. When I went out to some of these farmers, farm managers, great farm, why don't you contribute so we can go ahead and drill some recharge wells so when it rains, we can recharge some of the aquifer? Sorry. You know, it's something we took on ourselves and spent a lot, hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to help that potential future. I ask you not to vote for C, but look for something that is more equitable, that is going to work in general for the county. Don't be scared by the fact that somebody's telling you you're going to lose $8 million in taxes. There's going to be losses in taxes because we have to give up some of our land. We have to create some kind of a mechanism that will allow us to gather money together, retire lands, or create projects that are going to help us create a sustainable future. And I'm glad that Stephanie was able to get that $8 million grant. I think that is not enough. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. My name is Devin Avilas. I work for AgriRoll Cooperative, a farm management company here in Madera County. I'm here today to support option C. And one of the difficult things that you've mentioned is this law, the Sigma law, came down from the state. So none of us in this room really had a choice. Now it's coming to you to make a decision on what is right, what is wrong, how the law should be interpreted. I spent many hours on the advisory committee, and one thing that we always were very concerned about was protecting water rights. Never once did we say that someone's water right should be taken. Option C is not taking someone's right. What it is saying is that you have the right to pump the water onto your overlying ground for beneficial use. Now, I've heard several people say that we're overdrafting the basin. We know that's a fact. But we are using that water resource for a beneficial use. We are creating crops. We are creating jobs. I believe option C is more in line with current law as we see it today. I think it would be supported, as people have commented, if this were to go to an adjudication, the chances of option C prevailing are highly likely. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. If there's nobody else in the House that wants to make a public comment at this time, we'll go to the WebEx. And the first individual that I have listed who would like to make a comment is Julia Berry. Julia?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This is Julia Berry representing Clayton Water District today. Clayton Water District is 10,600 acres. Roughly 3,400 of those acres are in the Chowchilla Subbasin in the Red Top area adjacent to the San Joaquin River. And currently the Clayton Water District is not its own groundwater sustainability agency. It is represented by this body, the Madera County Chowchilla Groundwater Sustainability Agency. So we appreciate the opportunities that we've had to participate in the outreach. Many of our growers, there are 10 of them in total. They're not all in Madera County, but they have participated in the outreach meetings, and we appreciate what Stephanie and her team have done to make the opportunities available to us. There are some growers in the Clayton Water District that support option C. However, I do want to be clear that the board itself has not taken formal action to support any one option. And we do have some dryland farming in the district as well. So we don't have a recommendation today or an endorsement of any particular option. Our comments are circled more around how we're going to monitor the groundwater. And we've been active in participating in the ERA Watch program, the simulation that Stephanie and her team put together, which was very, very informative for some of the growers in our area. In fact, the chairman of Clayton Water District is also on the advisory committee for the GSAs, Larkin Harmon, and she participated in the ERA Watch program. So our comment is really about how we gather data. And what we've seen is that some of the data that's being used for ERA Watch and the remote sensing data doesn't match what's going on in the field for us. And so we'd like to continue to participate with the county and advise and potentially find additional ways that we can get real data from the ground from growers. And that would conclude our comments. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. The next individual on WebEx is Madeline Harris.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair and board members. This is Madeline from Leadership Council. So as Stephanie shared, obviously we're facing severe looming drought conditions, and we know that overdraft in the Madera subbasin has been and continues to be increasing. So that sets the GSA behind where it needs to be to avoid undesirable results and stay on track with the demand reduction trajectory in your GSP. So there's that, and then there's also the fact that we're already seeing alarming impacts to drinking water sources. As you all know, the county needed to expedite drilling of a community well in Fairmead last summer when it was drawing up air. And Self-Help Enterprises continues to receive calls from folks in Fairmead and several other communities regarding domestic wells going dry, and that's completely unacceptable. So because options B and C would increase the allocation amounts that are available for continued overpumping now, they would allow for severe impacts to drinking water in the coming years. So what we would like to see is to see a strengthened version of option A be adopted as soon as possible. Specifically, we have concerns over the current farm units concept, as we've shared with this board before, due to the fact that it would allow for concentrated areas of overpumping. And we'd also like to see a more immediate demand reduction path to get the GSA back on track to where it's supposed to be. We're really asking this board for the political courage to establish meaningful groundwater allocations so that Madera County can remain a livable place. And the fact of the matter is people can't live here without water for their homes. And this is a real concern because as of last summer, the county already required $9 million, which is more than every other county in the San Joaquin Valley combined, to replace all of the domestic wells that had gone dry during the last drought that still haven't been replaced. And then there's the impact that, prolonging demand reduction in a significant way would continue to have. So that really creates an economic impact to drinking water uses and really threatens the livability and quality of life overall in the county. So we completely understand that it's necessary to avoid widespread economic impacts, which is why we'd like to ask the board and staff to be creative in working with community residents and business owners on a just transition to jobs that pay dignified wages and are sustainable for the long term, given, just the conditions of nature and the aquifer that we're dealing with, that we can't afford to ignore any longer. So we urge you to pass a strengthened version of option A as soon as possible. And thank you for allowing us to comment on this important decision.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Michelle Staples.
Good afternoon. Michelle Staples. I'm a water lawyer at the Jackson Titus Law Firm representing the Madera Ag Water Association, or MAWA for short. Thank you for your leadership as a groundwater sustainability and allocating groundwater. You have been working hard at this for months, while other GSAs are just now starting to think about allocation questions. MAWA submitted a letter on this item in support of option C, so I will just touch on a few points that are discussed in greater depth in the letter. SGMA and the California Constitution put a few guide rails on allocating groundwater, including balancing competing needs for groundwater and overdrafted basins among competing users to achieve a fair and equitable result. Second, protecting existing reasonable and beneficial uses without extinguishing future overlying rights of the never irrigated lands. And SGMA also restricts against using groundwater pumping between the years of 2015 and 2020 to establish or defend against a prescriptive rights claim. So applying all these factors of the three options, option C addresses more of the factors that would be considered under California water rights law beyond just the extent of ownership in the basin, and as a result is the most legally defensible of the three options. For example, it addresses reasonable need, sustainability of the soil, suitability of the soil, and economic feasibility of irrigation, all of which are demonstrated, of course, by the fact that the acreage is currently irrigated. Acreage that has never been irrigated might not be able to economically access groundwater or might not have suitable soils or have other characteristics that make that land unable to reasonably and beneficially use the water. So taking water away from productive use and allocating it to never irrigated land goes against the constitutional reasonable and beneficial use requirements. Option C also protects existing and future overlying rights of the never irrigating acres in two ways, as we understand it. First, we understand that all the options, including option C, allow landowners of never irrigated acres to pump groundwater for domestic and livestock watering on their overlying land without fees and without regard to the allocation program. And second, we understand that if those landowners in the future decide to irrigate and convert some of their overlying acreage to irrigation use, that they could opt into the sustainable yield at any time for use on their overlying land. Now, of course, transition water would not be available to newly irrigated acreage. We ask that the resolution includes these clarifications that protect never irrigated acres in order to make option C more legally defensible. These clarifications that protect overlying rights or future overlying rights of this never irrigated acreage protect against constitutional or unconstitutional takings claims like we heard about. And they also satisfy California water rights law. We also ask the board to consider clarifying option C to use the transitional water calculation from the 2015 overdraft rather than 2020 numbers. Using the 2020 numbers adds an additional 144,000 acre feet of overdraft over the period that transitional water is available. It's not clear that the potential impacts of this additional overdraft have been analyzed to make sure that there are no additional impacts, for example, to domestic wells, groundwater-dependent ecosystems, and fisheries. And then using the 2015 number also makes option C more defensible by addressing SGMA's restriction on using that 2015 to 2020 groundwater use to establish or protect against prescription. So thank you again for all your hard work.
Thank you. The next commenter on WebEx is Jack Rice.
Good afternoon, Jack Rice with MAWA, the Madera Ag Water Association. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I appreciate, like everyone else, the challenge you're dealing with. We recognize that this is a significant issue, and it's hard because it's all about the harm, essentially, that SGMA implementation is going to impose on the county. MAWA worked really hard to understand the options, to understand the legal basis, the practical workability of them, and the fairness of them. And as Michelle Staples outlined and is described in the letter, option C with some clarifications and modifications is the best and most defensible approach. I just wanted to touch on a couple of points, is that option C is in fact the most consistent with water rights. It does protect overlying water rights. There are some very different and interesting views about water rights, and it's really key to get to make sure the allocation system aligns with what's most correct. So I just want to reiterate the importance of the most accurate understanding of water rights that's possible. One point on the practical implications, it's important to note that this is all challenging. It's all going to hurt. Option C does minimize the harm to irrigators. it will minimize how much they're going to have to cut back. Option C would prevent some individual landowners from being able to monetize land or a water allocation that they're not using. It would be kind of a lost opportunity for them, but it's in fact a real cost to irrigators to choose either option A or B. A and B would impose a greater harm on irrigators. And one last point is that the way the allocation or the original sustainable yield was set up, every acre contributed to the sustainable yield. It wasn't one type of land use over another, and it seemed like that was overlooked. Thank you very much. Appreciate the chance to comment.
Very good, thank you. And next we have Danielle Odan, I believe. Dolan, okay, it looks like the, the O goes into the L. Dolan, Danielle Dolan.
It's Danielle Dolan, thank you.
Dolan. Oh.
And thank you again for making this this meeting available to everyone and providing time for extensive public comment. I represent Local Government Commission, which is a nonprofit organization that works across the state of California, and I would just like to second the comments made by Madeline Harris from Leadership Council and urge the GSA to curb the escalating groundwater use in the subbasin by passing allocations without any further delay. We're concerned with the consolidation of allocations across farm units and would like to see those taken out of the proposal now, or at the very least phased out in the future. However, we recognize that time is of the essence, so we would like to see a strengthened version of option A approved, as this would lead to more demand reduction sooner. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments from WebEx? No. Okay, once in a while you'll hear this voice all of a sudden, sounding over the system. Like, where'd that come from? Is there anybody else here in-house that would like to make a comment? 1 minute. I was thinking about somebody who hasn't already made a comment, but
Just wanted to make sure that we're all aware of the fact that we're planning egal trebach, that we're planning on segregation, creating a new type of a citizen and their ability to utilize what they own. I think that what we need is to find a way to equalize more rather than equalize less. I would hate to see the water that I own being bought by somebody that's causing the problem, okay, leaving me in the lurch. I want to be able to use my own water in order to become sustainable. Thank you.
thank you. So with that, we'll bring it back to the board, and we have a couple of supervisors who would like to make comments. Supervisor Frazier.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for your comments. They were listened to, and I'm sure a lot of notes are taken up here. I've been dreading this day since the day I started running for office, knowing that this was coming down the pipe. But that's what we're here for, is to take this public input, look at what it does to our community, and find the best way to keep our community strong and healthy. This is, I hate being a regulator, especially on behalf of the state, but at the same time, this is something that without doing it in a way, our county will dry up anyway. There's only so far we can go down and take the water from the groundwater. So after listening to public comment, and there was something that Betsy had said that hit me, and was something that I had not, kind of put into what's going on here, and I'm hoping that through this I can figure out a way to land this on the Hudson with just maybe both of the both of the engines burning, but maybe be able to make this work. And what she had said was, you know, I'm going to continue to ranch, right? But I want to have my sustainable yield intact. And so I think where we have a flaw here in terms of our numbers, you know, B and C are both based on 2020. So just last year, things were going exactly the same. Nothing had been implemented, right? And in that time, Betsy was still ranching, not taking any of that sustainable yield, right? It was, the amount was going to the irrigated areas. And so if they're not accessing their sustainable yield, we're looking at the 85,000 number, right? But that's not actually being accessed, right? So you have your transitional water of 110,000, but if you apply the sustainable yield to everybody and they're not taking it, there should be more that goes back into transitional water. Is that so? What I'm saying is, we say our sustainable yield is at 85,000. Not everybody is accessing that sustainable yield right now. So, if you were to give it to a never irrigated land, but they're not taking it out of the ground, there would be a balance of water that would still go into, yeah.
No. So sustainable yield is a number that's determined first for the subbasin on its own, and then it's proportionally shared by acreage among the GSAs. But it's just one number. It's not, for math's sake, we did divide it up to show people how little it was, to really exaggerate or at least show people the extent of the overdraft. But the sustainable yield is all counted for.
I understand that, but
Okay.
so the actual ETAW for 2020, with nothing, you know, it just going the way it was 195,427, right? That would be sustainable yield plus transitional water.
So in 2020, for the Madera Subbasin, Madera County GSA, the total ETAW was 203,000 acre feet estimated. You remove the 90,000, that's the sustainable yield, and the remainder is the transition water at 2020, which now we already removed 2% from that. So we were using a value of 110,740 was the remainder at 2021 for the bucket and transition water. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and so what I'm saying, so if we brought in the 135 or the 35,000 plus 85,000 acres, that balance of the 35,000, they're still not going to be taking, even though you spread that sustainable yield over that larger acreage, they're still not going to be taking actual water out of the ground. So say that that 35,000, it's not actually being pumped out, right?
Correct.
So,
I think
you would still have the same amount of sustainable yield to allocate over the irrigated acres. If not, you end up 9 inches times 35,000. If they're not taking that, that would be taken away from the actual sustainable yield of actual water out of the ground.
so. First off, Supervisor, I understand your point there, but let me reframe it slightly, and that is the 35,000 acres that was in option A, the way it's described, would result in a quantity of water to some non-irrigated lands, which also did include some never irrigated lands in our estimate of that 35,000 acres. Those lands, yes, they would not pump it, but they would retain it only within their farm unit to the detriment of somebody who did not have non-irrigated lands. So it isn't that equally spreads. And that's the really difference
okay.
between option A and option C, is that you've removed that, you've shared that 35,000 acres use amongst everybody instead of a concentrated subset.
Okay, and so that's, so this was my proposal, that utilizing that figure. So when they opt in, they could yearly certify that they're not going to be utilizing their sustainable yield for that year. And they either don't have to pay their fees that year, and then that sustainable yield goes back in without them giving that up. Does that make sense?
So if I think I understand what you're saying, let me see if I can repeat it back to you to see if it is what you were saying. And that would be, let's use a hypothetical so that we can illustrate it a little bit more, that I have 3,000 acres of irrigated and 1,000 irrigated or never irrigated land, and I choose to opt all of it in, but my 1,000 never irrigated, I'm not going to want to use the sustainable yield at all on my whole parcel, and I essentially give it back to the good of the basin, and therefore I don't have a fee associated with it.
Mhm.
Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes.
Other than the accounting and tracking considerations of that, this again can get divided multiple different ways, because some farmers might say, sure, I'll give it back to the good of the basin, don't charge me, but I still want to have that option and I retain that opportunity. Or others may choose not to, so we'd be trying to manage that. What alternatively we had put forward in the resolutions and the discussions was the opportunity to opt in at some later point. We had suggested every 5 years that you would be able to revisit, but that's a
It'd almost be
discussion.
like the Williamson Act, when every year we.
So
put
you
that in.
could, right, so you could say, look, I'm not going to opt in right now, and 5 years from now, I'm going to decide to opt in that 1,000 acres of never irrigated land. And in the interim, it basically has been going back to the good of the basin, because in our division, that's where we end up with. The challenge has been, we've been asked for a lot of, certainty is too strong of a word, because none of this is certain. We've been asked for some level of expectation for a period of time for purposes of business planning, which makes absolute sense. So we start making division processes, and we end up with numbers that say for the next 5 years you have this. And if things continually change and morph within that, and people are shifting lands in and out and other things, that potentially raises some challenges for trying to maintain some consistency going forward with an expectation. However, let's put all this in the context of we're trying to manage to sustainability goals. We're going to be monitoring at representative monitoring wells to try and look at the response of the basin to the conditions of any kind of allocation approach. And we're going to need to manage to that. And if 5 years down the road, and let's hopefully we don't have 5 years of continued drought, but if we do, we might be in a worse spot where we have to shouldn't say completely, but really recalculate some of these buckets and make a significant change. So we're attempting to do two things: give some certainty, but retain flexibility, and that obviously creates challenges. So there's options there, and I think whatever you as the board decide to go forward with at this point, there are opportunities to make changes to that over time, so long as they aren't wholesale differences. And I'm going to borrow from something Mr. Jack Rice noted a long time ago, which was taking a small step forward is easier to correct than taking a large step forward. And so I think the allocation concepts we're trying to put forward here are taking those small steps forward, which are going to help us try and understand where are some of these wrinkles, where are some of these challenges, and then make some considerations of changes. None of us have crystal balls on this.
And in the opting in process, would there have to be a way to provide proof of access to water?
Oh, like drilling of a test well or something?
Or a hydrogeology study, or
So we are working on an opt-in. We can take feedback on that, on what that process is like, but we don't have that mechanism in place.
And then as a way to not be breaking in more ground, because that's something I'm worried about. You know, any of the never irrigated would couldn't opt in anymore that would sustain your farm unit. Having, you know, bringing in, it just is a worry. So those are just kind of the things that that's just my where I think we need to do.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Rogers.
Okay, I'm going to move that we adopt option C and that staff's recommendation made earlier concerning a date certain for irrigated lands be also included in the resolution. Further, I would wish to direct staff to develop a suspension for nutrient managed lands and bring that back to the board at some future date.
Would they be able to opt in or certify whether or not they're able to, if they're going to access water in that year or time frame? What I had talked about in terms of never irrigated, that they can opt in,
Right.
And say certify that they won't be using that water for a period of time, 1 year, 5 years, whatever it is, and
Yeah, does staff?
You know, why don't, while you're working on that, Supervisor Wheeler?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm still really mixed up. So we got about 35,000 acres that's in the basin of the 85,000 that's could be irrigated, but it's not right now in the wide area.
So that is our
Guesstimate.
estimate.
It's just a guesstimate.
That is our estimate, and
We're
that
going to come
includes.
up with more exact numbers as we go along.
Absolutely.
I want everybody to know that.
Yes.
This is our guesstimate as we're debating today. And those basins that we're using right now that you guys come up with, so is it total then 85 and 35 together?
So for options A and B, that's the denominator in the fraction, is the 85,000 currently irrigated plus the 35,000 that's either temporarily unirrigated or never irrigated.
Those basins are all declared by the State Department of Water.
The subbasins come from GWR's Bulletin 118.
We don't draw those lines.
We did not draw the lines, and would draw them differently if we could.
Yeah, and those lines are what they're guesstimating is all lands that's in the water basins themselves and not fractured rock properties.
Yes, good point. The lands that are drawn within the subbasin should be alluvial wells, not fractured bedrock wells. And they do a fair amount of geophysical mapping to get there.
Right.
That doesn't mean it's 100% accurate.
No, I agree. I mean, who's going to do it? I mean, we ain't got no magnifying glass to look down there and see. But, you know, I've been studying water for a long time with Mr. Scheitz there from Chowchilla. I've been measuring water for a long time, for probably since 1972 that I know of. And this is one of the worst droughts. I think it's worse than 77 myself. I've never seen some of our ponds go dry like they have already this year, this early. I have not seen, there is some people that's growing some grapes and stuff, you know, in fractured water. But I've witched over 200 wells up there, and I don't do it down here because I just got to do a drill as far as I know. I don't know. But up there you got to find those fractures. And I've hit 2 dry ones, but most of the time I've been pretty lucky witching. I've had some great teachers, started with Taylor Tieford, who done it with, showed me how to do it with willow sticks. And God, anyway, then Glenda Moss was the last teacher I used. Worked with 4 different guys that all thought they were experts, and I don't know how it works, but it does work. And I just did one not even a couple months ago and got, I don't know, 30, 40 gallons a minute. But, you know, that's not enough water to irrigate crops. And so that's what I was all set, I thought, to just use option C because of that. Because I don't see how, I know all our water down here, I would say 90% of our 95% of the water that is pumped out of the ground comes from up in the mountains. Might not be 95%, but it's damn close. So I know, I just don't see, I mean, our water is going down and filling those aquifers up, I know that. And it's coming from our property that we don't irrigate from. We water a little bit of stuff. I tried to irrigate about 200 acres on Wiley's Ranch out of 4,500 acres, and it never was successful. It had the deer good, so it made good hunting ground, so that was a good thing about it. I just have a hard time, you know, I mean, I think I didn't add them. I got them all wrote down. I should have added them up, who's against C and who is for C, but and being a rancher, not a farmer, we did farm 200 acres out here. I shouldn't say that. So by the fairgrounds, but I just don't see how we can allot some kind of a language that would let that fractured grounds be in those basins. Our problem has been with the basins. I've been fighting this for 10 years, 15 years maybe. Max Rodriguez, who used to be on here, we tried 2 or 3 times to get, I hate the word moratorium, but to stop any new wells that was going to be on grazing land that were going to irrigate kind of crops. I didn't care if it was grapes, most of it was almonds and pistachios. Couldn't get it done. There was always 3-2 vote. And that one in 20, whatever that was, Norm wrote what year that was, 2014. I wrote the date down, but 2014, I'm sure I voted yes for it. And Max probably did too, but we got defeated then too. And I would like to see if we use, in Dave's motion, if we do use pass item C, that I'd like to go back to 2010 numbers, because that's when they really started showing us, when that overdraft was really, when on the east side and out by Chowchilla, the water was dropping 10 foot a year. And in the middle up here around Madera, where all the homes are, it was only dropping 2 or 3 feet. And we started talking about that then. Nothing was ever done. Finally, Governor Brown came up with this Sigma and the GSAs and all that. And I was happy about it, but it don't even affect me. I'm up there. I got my water, but it's really running slow right now. Our ponds, I took pictures. I can show anybody who wants to see them. Our pond that we know is, my girlfriend and her properties had it for 20 years and it's never went dry. I took pictures of all the fish that died. Came back from my cabin this weekend. Never happened before. There's some catfish that big, dead. They're not alive now. So I know I'm going to probably piss a few people off too, and that's okay. That's my job. I know when I vote up here, 50% of the people like it and 50% of the people don't. I learned that a long time ago out on school boards. Can't please everybody, but I'm looking out for the health of Madera County. And I told those almond growers right here when I was setting out that in, and they were trying to tell me how valuable their almond land was. And I said, well, it might be valuable. Well, how valuable is it when there's no water? 0. And I'd a lot rather have a T-bone steak from that grazing land than a damn almond on my plate to eat. So.
Now, wait a minute.
I would. I'll eat your apricots you got in there. I love them, but I still got to have my T-bone steak. But I'm probably gonna depend how Dave makes this motion. I'm probably gonna support C, and I know not making everybody happy, but right now I think that I got to figure out how we're gonna stop this overdraft. And if
Well, the motion's not like you said, that this is not the unchangeable laws of the Medes and Persians. So, these things are going to develop over time.
it's gonna be an open book from this day on.
And this is a beginning,
Right.
and we're trying to do the right thing. So my motion,
Let's get counsel from our council before we make that motion.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. And there is a motion, not a second, I believe, on the floor. And just to be very clear, since this item has taken the time it's needed, I request that you allow Greg to read back into the record, since it was a while ago, the two edits from staff on the resolution. So
I
there are
agree.
two whereases that go in the body of the resolution, and then the options are exhibits to the resolution.
We have Supervisor Gonzalez who'd like to make a comment.
Can we share that on the screen?
We were trying to figure that out. There used to be a projector down there that would allow us to do it, but I don't know if there's a way. If we can, yes, but I'll need IT and some assistance because I'm not sure. Oh, she's gonna, yeah.
You can plug it in there.
Sure.
Okay. Yes, Supervisor Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to add that this by far is not an easy decision. It's one of the decisions that I've been dreading when I'll be honest, when the sound system and the internet went down, there was a portion of me that thought that God heard me because I said, God, please make a miracle happen. And then I prayed for $1 million.
The rain started coming, right?
if you got that kind of pull, let's start praying for rain.
So, but I do want to add that I was here as a staffer in 2014, 2015 when my predecessor used the word that no one likes to hear of moratorium. I think we would be in a different place had we implemented some type of
Absolutely.
planting regulations, but that's neither here nor there. We can't go back in time. But in addition to that, we also can't, two wrongs don't make a right. So if we don't have the water, and I am compelled by the comments from our cattle ranchers, it's very difficult. But we have to look at it as the pros and the cons. I will say that I think Stephanie's going to have some, sorry, I got distracted. I think Stephanie will have lots of interest and requests about what is unirrigated, the definitions, and there will be some complexities in that. And I hope and that's why it's important to share the amendment to the motion. And this is hard because we know we have friends, in some cases, family members who will be affected tremendously. And so I just wanted to, sorry, I just want to, this is not easy. So thank you, staff, for the information.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to put it up. The computer did want to activate Microsoft, so we're not going to do that, but it'll take a minute.
All right, so to read this into the record, it says, whereas irrigated land includes agricultural lands that are currently irrigated as of June 8th, 2021, or were last irrigated as recently as January 1st, 2015, but now may otherwise be non-irrigated, parentheses, e.g. fallowed or idled, and whereas in determining what constitutes an irrigated parcel, the county GSA may rely upon 1. Madera County assessor records, 2. Satellite or aerial imagery, 3. Evapotranspiration analysis performed by a remote sensing service, 4. County GSA staff inspection, and 5. The submittal by parcel owners or representative of pertinent documentation when enrolling the parcel into the GSA allocation approach and acceptance of associated requirements imposed therein, and any and all of which would need to be to the satisfaction of the county GSA.
Very good, thank you.
That included in your motion, Dave?
Yeah, that's what I added in.
Is that what you were interested in, Brett?
Well, part of it, but the other part is regarding
About
the because
Opting in and out.
I do. I feel like at the that it will end up. It'll be taking it down even faster without that, having the ability to opt in and then certify for 5 years that they'll not be accessing their sustainable yield, and then not having to pay fees during that time, and then that water then goes back into the sustainable yield pot that then gets divvied out over the entire or divvied out over the remaining acres that will be taking sustainable yield.
Supervisor Wheeler.
Oh, that was the same thing. But if you do that, would they have to pay a penalty for the not paying all those years? I mean, it's like taking out of the Williamson Act.
It's basically like paying them through salt to not pump. It's kind of the same thing. So during that time, it's going back into the benefit of the rest of the basin.
For the benefit of all.
Yeah. So there is a benefit to that they are not utilizing that water. So there's no penalty because
I see now.
I'd just like to make a comment on that. The only problem I see with that would be, I think somebody brought up the planning of that, for, say, other users that are planning on that sustainable yield down the road. If people have the opportunity to opt in or opt out, then to me, it would cause, issues for those that are making 10 to 15-year plans as if that water would be available.
Maybe it's like Williamson Act. You
opt out, you pay.
Or no, for 10 years or for 5 or 10 years. So it allows for planning for that sustainable yield for years. Instead of just like, I yearly would be probably
too much.
Way too much.
Any comments from you experts?
Yeah.
Greg was pointing out that the resolution your board adopted in 2020 would probably need to have these tweaks to it. That was the overall allocation approach. So we would need to bring that back, but you can still move ahead.
So you don't even put that in there, you're saying?
Yeah,
Because it's already in there?
I think it needs to be developed if we're going to go that direction.
Yeah.
We would need to
vet it out.
throw it back out to staff. And I think tweaks can be made if we want to make them.
Well, there's going to be a lot of
Time.
tweaks in this, I guarantee you.
That's right.
Day to day.
I agree with
year
you.
to year.
Right.
I totally agree with you. Yeah.
I think it's important to get our overall plan or idea moving forward, and then, we can make those adjustments as time goes on, after we have a chance to really study them. For instance, David, you talked about the dairies. That's going to take some time to
Ferret that out.
look at that, and
Yeah.
as well as, potential opting in and out. So, but, I think that, we really need to move forward with the, as defined plan as we can, so that plans can be made.
Right. I agree.
So there's a motion on the floor. We have a second.
I'll second it.
Okay. Roll call vote.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The motion is to adopt option C with the revisions as stated by staff, and to direct staff to develop a plan for suspension of lands within nutrient management areas.
And to develop an opt-in mechanism.
Right.
Similar to what Supervisor Frazier was alluding to, in terms of people opting in, certifying that they'll not use water, and then not having to pay fees.
Right.
And then that we also will
Well-
bring an allocation approach back to you, which is, it would be another version of the December 2020 allocation.
Yeah, and that addition that he had on the screen.
Right. Yeah, that's included in the motion.
Did you get it? Okay, roll call vote.
Supervisor Rogers,
A sad yes.
Supervisor Wheeler,
Reluctantly, yes.
Supervisor Frazier,
I'd like to see more for that opt-in, but we'll be bringing that back. Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez,
Yes.
Chairman Poitras.
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
All right, very good. Stephanie, I just have one other question in regards to the glide path. We are 2 years into this, and so we'll be starting in 2022, and which would be, if we would have started in 2020, it would have been 2% and then 4% and then 6%. But we play catch-up ball for 20 and 21 as well. So, do you have any just kind of big picture as far as what that's going to look like what year we're planning on catching up to, like in 2024 or 2025?
Sure. The 2% a year for 5 years is part of the GSP. So if we were to change that now, it would mean that we would need to amend the GSP, and that would start the review process with GWR again. They have a 2-year review process. I would suggest that as part of the GSP for 2025, that we include a discussion of how to ramp up. We were at 6% for 15 years. You can look at going to a higher percent in the next 5 years. So that's the easiest way to do it.
That wouldn't be until 2025. So what would be the allocation, or what would it be in 2022? Would it be 6%?
Yes.
Okay.
Chairman?
Gotcha. Yes.
Did we say the 2010 or 2015 water? I mean, 2015 or 2020 water?
Well, C was actually.
I asked for 2015 if we could. I don't know. Forgot to put ask that, David. Would you put that 2015 instead of 2020?
We've already.
Date certain of the definition for irrigated lands was January 1st, 2015. And then option C used the 2020 allocation.
Well, that's what I asked if we could change it when we were, before we,
Yeah, I'd rather not. I think it opens a can of worms again.
The further back in time we go, the more we will struggle legally.
Yep.
Okay.
That's exactly what I was aiming for.
This is a significant reduction. Your board has done a huge thing to help towards our progress with sustainability. And I know it was painful. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Look, of all the votes I've taken in my entire career, this was the most trepidatious and the most painful. And I resent the state of California for putting us in this position to begin with.
well, we put ourselves in this.
Well, I think them taking away the San Joaquin water has hurt us.
Let us, let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll resume with item 6F. Thank you.
With this, I think we'll be able to figure that out with that opt-in. Crystal? That's what else trying to. I wish this is some.
Right, my eyes. There were some good things that were said on there. David.
Don't have this ability to opt in some of these.
Oh, yeah. Being dead. Well, and Jack Rice. He's also.
Oh.
But I mean, I did it. We're not going to choose.
I think we're.
I
think that's
one instance.
We'll work
These peers.
Yeah. Talk about it.
Like, doesn't matter. It's not seeing the way.
We don't. Done,
You only got Sandra. You did.
It's fine. This other lawyer says the same.
Get them. I think this is one of those things. 8 coming up with. But after taking public input, create. The real.
I had to call.
This, you're gonna opt.
Was he cool?
Yeah.
It's not usual.
Mike. Almost said.
Is it, vision you get in your head is, well, it's never been realized because.
Well,
I
it
did
depends.
remember.
It also depends.
And that's not, looked at the map. Like, that's, so, like, it's not, yeah. So don't give up on, or, yeah. I know, no, yeah, so there is still a pathway. Or crafting. Allows everybody to go in and just get on this. Because in this case, so, yeah, no, thank you. And I think with it going back to one. I think, and I think with that. I think with I know. We all. Thank you, Mike. Greg. Stephanie. Really.
Oh. Okay, is Supervisor Rogers available? I guess he's not, but that's fine. Let's go ahead and move on with item 6F.
Hey, Nick.
All right.
Nick.
Jared, are you here for 6F? Okay, thank you. Come on up. There you
Good.
go. Yeah,
All
go.
right.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board. Jared Carter, Public Works. This item is for annexation of one parcel in the Oakhurst area into MD 22A for sewer services. It is a single parcel with a single family dwelling on it, and available for any questions.
Very good. Are there any questions of Jared? If not, are there any members of the public wishing to make a comment? Hearing, seeing none, I'll accept the motion for action.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Huh? Yes.
Chairman Poitras?
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jared.
Thank you, Jared. Let's move on to pending legislation. We have item 8A. It's a discussion and approval to ratify a letter in support of the governor's proposed budget supporting the investment of $7 billion in broadband technology, including rural areas.
Chairman Poithers, we did forward this letter last week because it's part of the ongoing negotiations between the Senate and the governor on his May revise. The Senate was on a path to cut some things out of the governor's budget that were actually well positioned to help rural counties with broadband. So we crafted this letter, you forwarded it, but we, as process requires us, we're bringing it in front of the board today for official approval.
Very good. Are there any questions? Are there any members of the public wishing to make a comment about this letter? I'll accept a motion for action.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Chairman Poitras?
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
Thank you. Before we go back into closed session, we do have supervisor and staff reports, so I'll start to my left this time with Supervisor Wheeler. Do you have any comments?
What a day. Moving on. I'm just happy we got our budget done. I just want to make a statement on that. I mean, somebody went and made a public comment about how we should do it on a regular day. I've never been on any board, my whole life, school boards, these boards, other boards that I know, boards of supervisors, they all have special meetings to do the budget hearings. It's important to do that, and it's important to people, if they are interested, to be at the meetings, to hear what's going on.
Very good. Thank you. Supervisor Gonzalez.
Nothing to report.
Supervisor Rogers.
Nothing to report.
Supervisor Frazier, nothing? Okay, and I have nothing to report. CAO Varney.
Chairman, we have a request from Nathan Alonzo, who is our government relations rep at PG&E. He's been very cooperative and helpful for the rural counties. He would like to come in on June 15th and present about a 15-minute presentation on updates related to public safety power shutoffs and other things PG&E is doing that directly affect Madera County residents. So if you are good with that, I will have our staff put that on the agenda for the 15th, and I will contact Mr. Alonzo. If he has slides that are pre-staged, we can get those to the clerk tomorrow.
Very good. I think that sounds great.
I think it's important.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
Right.
you. We'll arrange it, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. Council Garza,
No report, Chairman. Thank you.
clerk of the board.
And nothing to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Trieber.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Chief of Development Services, Matt Trieber, just one quick item to report and then also inform the board. So we did discuss briefly last week in regards to the solid waste and our contracts, existing contracts with the haulers have the automatic fuel index and CPI increase. That is the subscription base. So the board actually, doesn't approve those rates. They simply, the haulers provide those rates to us. So I did want to let you know in the Madco area, it is a 13.5% increase, fuel index and CPI. That takes their current residential rate from $36.89 to $40.92. In the Red Rock area, it is a 6.495% increase for the CPI and fuel, which takes their new rate. It's a tier because you have three different tiers there, but $28.62 all the way to $38.07 a month. Their current existing is $26.90 on the low end and $35.78 on the high end. And we will work to we have our draft letter in support of the Senate bill dealing with the organic waste collection. So that is drafted. RCRC, we worked with them on that, and they have reviewed that language. And so we will have that for the board's signature. We'll probably push for next board item under pending legislation to have that letter for your consideration and authorization.
Very good, thank you.
We'll be attending RCRC next week, so if anybody has anything.
Go ahead and speak in the microphone. Nobody can hear you.
I said I will be attending RCRC next week, and so anybody have anything you would like delivered there, I'm happy to
Thank you.
support that.
Thank you for your participation. And with that, we'll go back in a closed session.
Oh, okay.
Here you go. Good afternoon, everybody. We're back from closed session. And Council Garza, is there anything to report out?
Supervisor Rogers left closed session at 3:05 p.m., but there are no reportable actions from your closed session. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. And we shall adjourn the meeting.